You put something down, a cup, a book, a set of keys, something ordinary, something you handle every day without thought. You set it on the table and you let go and it stopped. Completely and immediately and without any drama, it was simply there, motionless, occupying its small piece of the world with the quiet permanence of objects at rest. You walked away, the cup stayed. That is what objects do when you put them down, they stop. You have put thousands of objects down in your life and they have all done the same thing. They stopped. The stopping is so reliable, so universal, so fundamental to the experience of living in a physical world that it has never once occurred to you to question it. Things stop. That is what rest means. That is what stillness means. That is what the solid, stable, dependable physical world is built from. Nothing about that cup has changed since you put it down. But let me ask you something. What if nothing ever stops? Not approximately stops, not stops at the scale you can observe, but actually physically, at every level of description down to the most fundamental, never stops. What if rest is a word that describes how things look from a particular distance, and underneath that appearance, at every scale smaller than the one your senses operate at, everything that has ever existed has been in continuous, ceaseless, irreducible motion since the moment it came into being, and will remain in motion until the last moment of the universe. What is stillness precisely? Find it. Point to it in the physics. You will not find it. And the reason you will not find it goes deeper than atoms, deeper than particles, all the way down to the structure of space and time themselves. And what it finds there is something that connects the restlessness of matter to the restlessness of the universe, to the irreversible arrow of time you are riding right now without any possibility of stopping. The answer is going to make the table feel different under your hand. Now let's build the case for stillness carefully, because it has deep physical roots and it is not simply wrong. It is a description that works at a particular scale and breaks down below it. Newtonian mechanics is explicit about rest. An object at rest stays at rest unless acted upon by an external force. This is the first law. Rest is a valid state. It has the same physical status as uniform motion. Both are inertial states. Both are what objects do when nothing disturbs them. Classical physics does not privilege motion over rest. They are equivalent. A cup on a table is in a perfectly legitimate physical state, and calling it motionless is not an approximation at the Newtonian scale. It is precisely correct. You might say, the atoms are moving. Yes, I learned that in school. Thermal motion. But the object as a whole is not moving. The center of mass is stationary. That is what stopping means, and it is a real thing. And that is a precise and defensible position within its domain. Let's check what happens when we push below the thermal motion, below the atomic scale, all the way to the quantum floor. If you want to understand how the universe actually works, not just how it looks, but how it works, hit that subscribe button. We are going to take things apart and see what makes them tick. Let's find things out together. Here is the first layer of restlessness. The cup on your table is made of molecules. The molecules are made of atoms. The atoms are not still. Even at absolute zero, the coldest possible temperature, the state of minimum thermal energy, the atoms in a solid are not motionless. They vibrate. This is the zero-point motion we have encountered before in this channel, the irreducible quantum vibration that the uncertainty principle demands. Temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energy of particles, and at room temperature, the atoms in your cup are vibrating at roughly 10 trillion times per second, each atom oscillating around its equilibrium position in the crystal lattice with amplitudes of roughly 1/10 of an angstrom. The cup is still. Its atoms are oscillating 10 trillion times per second. But let's go deeper. The atoms are made of nuclei and electrons. The electrons are not still either. The electron in a hydrogen atom in its ground state does not orbit the nucleus the way a planet orbits a star. That classical picture is wrong. The electron exists as a probability distribution, a standing wave of quantum amplitude spread across a region of space around the nucleus. The electron does not have a trajectory. It does not move from point A to point B, but it is not still. The wave function evolves continuously. The probability amplitude at every point in space changes with time according to the Schrödinger equation. The electron's quantum state is in constant dynamic evolution. Here's the analogy that makes this visceral. Imagine a bell that has been struck. The sound fades to nothing and the bell appears still, but the metal is vibrating at frequencies too high, amplitudes too small for you to detect with your hand. Go smaller to the crystal structure and the atoms are vibrating. Go smaller still to the electron clouds and the quantum states are evolving. At no level does the bell simply stop. Each level of description reveals motion that the level above concealed. Your cup is that bell. The silence is at your scale. Below your scale, nothing is quiet. Do you see what happens? Now let's descend further, because the quantum motion of electrons and the zero-point vibration of atoms are well known if underappreciated. What is less often discussed is what happens when you push the question of stillness all the way down to the quantum field level, to the vacuum itself, to the state of minimum energy, to the answer to the question, what does the universe look like when you remove everything? The answer is that you cannot remove everything. The quantum vacuum, the lowest possible energy state of every quantum field, is not empty. It is alive with fluctuations. Virtual particles, pairs of particle and antiparticle, continuously pop into existence and annihilate, borrowing energy from the vacuum for intervals so brief that the uncertainty principle permits it without violating energy conservation. The electromagnetic field fluctuates. The electron field fluctuates. Every quantum field that exists is in continuous, irreducible, inescapable motion at every point in space. Space is not empty. Space is the most active thing there is. Now I want to take this deeper, because the zero-point motion and the vacuum fluctuations are the microscopic story. There is a macroscopic story running simultaneously that is, if anything, more vertiginous. You put the cup on the table. The table is on the floor. The floor is part of a building. The building sits on the earth. The earth is not still. It rotates on its axis at roughly 1,670 kilometers per hour at the equator. It orbits the sun at roughly 107,000 kilometers per hour. The sun orbits the center of the Milky Way at roughly 720,000 kilometers per hour, completing one revolution approximately every 225 million years. The Milky Way moves through the local group of galaxies toward the Andromeda Galaxy at roughly 110 kilometers per second. The local group falls toward the Virgo cluster. The Virgo cluster is drawn toward the Great Attractor. The Great Attractor is part of a larger flow within the Laniakea supercluster, and the entire observable universe expands in every direction at a rate that increases with distance, driven by dark energy, the expansion itself carrying every galaxy away from every other galaxy through the swelling of space itself. The cup on your table is motionless relative to the table. Relative to the center of the Milky Way, it is moving at 720,000 kilometers per hour. Relative to the cosmic microwave background, the best available reference frame for the universe as a whole, it is moving at roughly 600 kilometers per second, carried by the motion of the local group. Stillness is not a property of the cup. It is a relationship between the cup and a chosen reference frame. Change the reference frame and the stillness dissolves. This is the part that keeps me up at night, because here is the deepest version of this problem, stated precisely. Einstein's special relativity tells us that there is no privileged reference frame, no frame that is truly at rest in an absolute sense. Every frame is equivalent. The cup is motionless relative to the table and hurtling through the galaxy relative to the galactic center, and both descriptions are equally valid, equally real, equally physical. There is no fact of the matter about whether the cup is moving or still in any absolute sense. Motion and rest are not properties of objects. They are properties of relationships between objects and observers. But relativity does something even stranger than this. It tells us that motion through space and motion through time are linked, that they are components of a single motion through four-dimensional space-time. Every object moves through space-time at a constant rate, the speed of light. An object at rest in space is moving entirely through time at the maximum rate. An object moving through space is moving some of its space-time motion into the spatial directions, which means it moves through time more slowly. Time dilation is not a metaphor. It is a geometric consequence of the way motion in space trades off against motion in time. This means that stillness in space is maximum velocity in time. The cup on the table, motionless in your reference frame, is moving through time at the fastest rate the universe permits. It is not still. It is racing through time at the speed of light, in a direction you cannot point to, carrying every atom and every quantum field fluctuation within it along a world line through space-time that began at the Big Bang and will end at the heat death of the universe, or whenever the cup is destroyed, whichever comes first. Nothing stops. Nothing has ever stopped. The concept of stopping is a story we tell at the scale where the motion is too small or too large or in the wrong dimension to see. Bring this back to your hand on the table right now. The pressure you feel, the electromagnetic repulsion between your hand's electron clouds and the table's electron clouds, holding them apart across a gap that never closes, is itself a dynamic process. The electromagnetic interaction is mediated by virtual photons being continuously exchanged between the charged particles. The solidity of the table is not a static property. It is a dynamic equilibrium, maintained by constant exchange, by continuous quantum interaction, by the ongoing activity of fields that have not been still for a single instant since the Big Bang. The stillness you feel is the stillness of a river that looks smooth from a distance. Walk to the bank and you see the current. Dive in and you feel the turbulence. Go deeper and every water molecule is vibrating. Go deeper still and every atom is in quantum motion. Go deeper still and the vacuum itself is churning with virtual particles. There is no bottom to the activity. There is no scale at which you find genuine rest. And here is what I find beautiful about this, after the vertigo passes. The restlessness is not chaos. It is the mechanism of existence. The zero-point motion keeps atoms from collapsing to points. The vacuum fluctuations give rise to the Casimir force, to the Lamb shift in atomic energy levels, to phenomena that shape chemistry and therefore biology. The thermal motion of atoms is what temperature means, what heat means, what the flow of energy from hot to cold means, the engine of every process in the physical world. The motion of the Earth through the galaxy is the history of the solar system. The expansion of the universe is the running of the cosmic clock. Nothing stops because stopping would mean a system with perfectly defined positions and perfectly defined momenta simultaneously. And that is precisely what the uncertainty principle forbids. The universe is restless because the universe is quantum mechanical. And being quantum mechanical is what allows the universe to be a universe rather than a static, determined, infinitely boring block of classical matter. The cup on the table is not still. It is participating in the universe's continuous, irresolvable, beautiful refusal to stop. You put it down. It kept going. Everything does. Everything always has. If this twisted your brain a little bit, good. That means it's working. I'll see you in the next one.